pleasant good morning, everybody. Great to be with you on another edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest, along with the red hot, smoking hot, on fire. This man has not lost a game in centuries. The great Mike Lubie Lubitz. How are you, Lubie? Are you feeling it this week? 2 games to handicap, and we'll get into the AFC game between the Ravens and, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. It's the Fat Man versus John Harbaugh. It's probably the 2 best teams in the AFC that have survived. I don't know. A lot of people would say that was the Buffalo Bills, but guess what? The Buffalo Bills lost that last game to the Kansas City Chiefs at their home ballpark, while the Chiefs were on the road, where they haven't been all that effective. So even though it was a missed field goal, and by the way, how ridiculous is this, Lubie? But what has the world come to where this kicker, Tyler Bass, is getting death threats?
Oh, jeez.
And being attacked online with the most derisive, derogatory kind of commentary that you could possibly ever have to put up with. I mean, it's ridiculous. Guy missed a field goal. He's good enough to be out there in the first place. Now, I thought he was suspect going into that ball game because the previous week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he nearly coughed a bit up as he just looked awful in that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Got a kick blocked. Not sure if that was his fault, but low line drive to center field. It was blocked by a lineman. That turned the ball game around, gave the Steelers some momentum. They got back into a game that they were seemingly hopelessly out of. And then late in the ball game, he had a shank that drove bettors to want to pop a cyanide cap or start gargling with Mr. Clean, because that could have easily made the difference in the point spread. The Bills were trying to cover 10 in that game. Why do I know that? And why did I feel that it had so much impact? Because I was a fool that was laying the 10. Turned out to be a fortunate circumstance, but nonetheless, it was that scary drive at the end of the game where it looked like, how many times has this happened to you people, where a team is out of the ball game, there's no chance they're going to win it, but the other team goes into a little bit of a prevent, soft shell-like coverage in the secondary. There's a minute 45 to go. There's a timeout or 2 involved, and they just allow the team to march down the field and get what is a token touchdown, which buries the people that were laying the points at the very end of the ballgame. That nearly happened as the Steelers were marching the ball down the field. Looked like they were going to score. But that being said, Tyler Bass, does he really deserve to be getting death threats, Lubie? I mean,
No.
It's ridiculous.
Well, he didn't lose the game. Like, people are doing this weird thing. Like, it would have been a tie. It wouldn't have been a win. And they gave the Chiefs had a minute 40. Yeah, the Chiefs didn't score in the end because the Chiefs kneeled out. The Chiefs had 1 or 2 timeouts and a minute 40. And all they would have needed was a field goal. And they have a really good kicker. The Bills weren't winning that game. And that game wasn't going to overtime. So that's the weird thing people are doing. Yeah, you want the kicker to make it there to put pressure on the Chiefs. But then the second half, the Chiefs offense opened up. I mean, Kelsey had 2 touchdowns. Like, they okay. We lost Defo. But yeah, like, people are doing this weird thing with Tyler Bass where they're putting it all on the kicker. The kicker missed a field goal. Oh my God. Look, you want them to make the field goal. You want to put the pressure on the Chiefs. You want to have the Chiefs have to go down and make a field goal. It's a minute 40. Nothing's guaranteed in life. You never know. But it's Patrick Mahomes. This is what people are scared of with Patrick Mahomes, right? So they turned it on. They had put up points in the second half. They were moving the ball. You had a minute 40. You had at least 1 timeout. They may have had more. And all they needed was a field goal. I'm sorry, I find it hard to believe that the Chiefs weren't going to score there. So to me, this stuff with the kicker. Yes, it sucks he missed a kick because we lost on that last second drive by the Chiefs and the opportunity for the Bills to stop them and force overtime. But it wasn't like they won the game with that kick. It wasn't a last second kick that he booted. Or it wasn't like it was a last second kick down 3 to go to overtime. No. There was a minute 40 left. People are so weird when it comes to blaming people for failures. Look, I'm the king of blaming coaches. To this day, I can't stand Leonard Hamilton as an FSU fan because he's been pretty much mediocre to bad the majority of his time in Tallahassee. But he has had some good years, and it's okay to admit that and understand that. This thing about have to blame someone. Oh, let's blame. And Josh Allen, same thing. Josh Allen actually played pretty well in that game. They lost. I mean, the Bills were a flawed team for the majority of the season. The Bills were a flawed team. Okay, so why is it hard for people to just accept that? The Chiefs were flawed too, and they just were a little better. They had the better coach, which we said going in, and they had the better quarterback, which we said going in, and they won a close game. It makes sense. Yeah, the kicker missed a kick. Okay, and the Chiefs again would have gotten the ball back around 2 minutes, and okay, I'm finishing this. So what else are you going to do? This is the morning briefing. Defo, we've lost Defo. I'm going to wrap it up here because we're going, so might as well wrap it up. I do want to finish talking about the game. Chiefs, Ravens. I think it's pretty simple. The Chiefs, again, flawed team. Yes, you don't bet against Mahomes. Well, you do. I mean, he's lost games. He hasn't. He's been to 6 straight AFC championships. He hasn't been to 6 straight Super Bowls. So he's gone to this place and lost. He lost to a Bengals team that was nowhere near as good as this Ravens team. The Ravens team is playing as good defensively as anyone. Lamar Jackson's playing as smart and patient as he's ever played, and that was his big issue. It's all about running. If you stop him from running, he stalls out. Well, the Texans in that second quarter stopped him from running, and he stalled out for 3 straight drives. And then the second half came. He didn't start running again. No, he's like, okay. He took what was there. He now has Zay Flowers that can run all the routes and not just be a 9-route guy. He now has. I can't send you it again. He now has a OBJ who's not the OBJ with the Giants, but he's OBJ that's willing to be the second receiver and be consistent and help, which he hasn't really had. They have a really good run game. They have a good offensive line. And he's mature enough to realize, okay, I don't always have to run. I don't always have to make the big play. Let me just play smart. And that's freaking scary. And they also have a good coach on their own. I just think it's pretty simple. I think the Ravens, whatever the spread is, I think the Ravens are going to win. I think they're going to win easy and cover easy. I mean, I've been on this whole time. So anyways, to me, it's pretty simple. The Chiefs are a flawed team. You can't bet against Mahomes. Yeah, but again, Mahomes hasn't been to 6 straight Super Bowls. He's been to 6 straight AFC Championship games. And that's the thing that's funny. Brady won most of them. He didn't win all of them. Brady did go to AFC Championship games and lose. He did go to the second round playoffs and lose. Like, the greats do play teams that are just better at times. Montana played teams that were better. He won 4 Super Bowls. He didn't win 8. So, like, I just think we talk ourselves into this thing so much about this guy's the greatest. And he is. Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, and he's already an all-time great. Like, he's already probably a top 5 quarterback. You look at his achievements, you look at his numbers, and the fact that he's not done. He's only sort of beginning. But the Ravens are just better, and they're better on every aspect, and they're at home too. So to me, and the spread's not like some crazy spread. It's under 4.
Hook.
It's under 4. I think the Ravens win, and I think they win pretty easily, to be honest.
Well, I mean, if you were looking at the performance, we talked about this on a couple of shows that we were on, and you ask yourself, okay, of the various units that were on display, of the 8 teams that were playing in the divisional championship games, which was the best? I mean, and it was clear cut, the Baltimore Ravens defense, and it's been that way. I mean, they were pounding the opposition in their playoff game. Talking about the Houston Texans, who were an upstart team that had shown a lot of offensive firepower. C.J. Stroud was on a roll. He wasn't one of those players that you thought was going to wilt because he was a rookie, and yet was able to do nothing, including getting shut out 24-0 in the second half of that game. It took the Ravens offense a little while to get going. The only score they gave up in terms of touchdowns, they gave up the opening drive, a field goal, and then a special teams play. Other than that, it was 0.0, Mr. Blutarski. So, I mean, and if you're asking yourself, I mean, you saw a very competitive game. It looked like the San Francisco 49ers should have gone down to the Green Bay Packers, Buffalo Bills, and Kansas City back and forth. I mean, it was an exciting game to watch, but in the end, you had the old... The Bills weren't able to get into the end zone, and unfortunately, they were going with a kicker that was kicking like the ball had a gyroscope in it in the last couple of ball games. And, so, I mean, if you were looking at who was the most impressive, the Detroit Lions also kind of left the door open for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their game. What was their offense so overwhelmingly impressive? I don't know. Is that right? They scored enough points to comfortably win the game by 8 and cover the point spread for the faithful out there that were betting the Lions in the Cinderella story. But neither of those teams had anything close to what was represented by the Baltimore Ravens defense. So I'm with you, Mr. Chalk. And you know what? Who's going to go against you right now? 4-0 last week. Are you kidding me? An incredible performance by Defo Lubie. And then you had me by the jugular, although you failed to make the wager and actually booked a bet, which was your Florida State Seminoles the other night over the Syracuse Orange. The bets that you don't make. So I'm inclined to go with you and say Ravens, and then I'm rooting for the Cinderella story in the other game. So I'm going to go ahead and put my money behind the Detroit Lions, which may be foolish. But nonetheless, it seems like you're in there with a shot. And can they go on the road and take on the San Francisco 49ers, who by all rights should have been already playing golf at Pebble Beach and deciding where they were going to go on vacation, but Green Bay unable to close the door. Hey, a bunch of things happened, too, in the world of sports. Jim Harbaugh, as predicted, ended up with the Los Angeles Chargers. They didn't want him to go back to Atlanta for a second interview, so they did whatever they could to keep him off that plane.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like the scene in Casino where the big Japanese shark is about to get on the plane, and Don Rickles says, "Oh, how unfortunate. We can't get this thing started, but we'll give you a suite of rooms on the top floor, and all you have to do is spend the night, and then we'll make sure that everything is copacetic for you to leave tomorrow." And, of course, he comes back to the casino and blows back the million that he won. And everybody's happy about that because the longer you play, the longer you stay, the more likely you're to be separated from your money. There are very few casino games that are designed to be favorable to the players. And, yeah, I mean, if you look at Jim Harbaugh, quirky, right? I mean, is it like Pee Wee Herman meets Vince Lombardi? The guy we know can coach. He's been successful at every level, wildly so, including what you thought was going to be a stint in the pros that was going to go on perpetually after whether he wanted to stay with the San Francisco 49ers or not. I guess the lure of easy money, college football, was too tempting for Harbaugh. He had a chance to coach his alma mater. It was a big deal. But were you surprised when he left San Francisco after 4 very successful years there and didn't stick around in the NFL? You don't usually see, except for Nick Saban and coaches that fail at the professional level, you rarely see them go back to college. It was doubtful you were ever going to see Jimmy Johnson coaching a college team again after the run that he had with the Dallas Cowboys. And he came on and ended up coaching the Miami Dolphins. Did all right there. He had a lot of a mess to straighten out that was left, unfortunately, by the late, great Don Shula.
Yep.
But he, was unlikely to end up taking another college job. Usually a guy, if he has success in the pros, he's not going back to the collegiate ranks. You'll see guys like Matt Rule who do a belly flop when they go into the pros, or many others who have tried it. But you rarely see a guy that had the kind of success Jim Harbaugh had going back to the collegiate level. So
look, he may have gotten another NFL job. Remember, it started to wane. I'm trying to find his records.
Yeah.
Because we remember the good with San Francisco because they went to multiple conference championship games. They went to the Super Bowl. They were leading in the Super Bowl and should have won until his brother's team came back after a power outage and won in the second half with the Ravens. Yeah. Flacco having one of the best playoff runs ever as a quarterback. But remember, the last couple of years it started to wane, and there was a lot of issues because that's the problem. That's why a lot of these guys work in college. You only have guys 2-3 years nowadays, so that crowing doesn't wear on them. It's still, yeah, coach. In the NFL, when you're with a guy for 6-7 years, you're like, all right, we've heard this before. Thank you, rah-rah.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing why Pete Carroll worked for so long, because he's the king of rah-rah. Like the Harbaugh thing started to wane because remember, he's a tough son of a bitch. And the players were like, dude, I make like double what you make. I don't care what the fuck you're saying. So but you're right. He may have gone to another NFL job. We see guys move from NFL team to NFL team, but it wasn't a shock that he left the Niners. And again, look, Michigan, as we've seen, is willing to pay NFL money. So, and he can control it. He's the kind of guy that like controlling it. He got a title there. They're about to get hammered by sanctions. Okay, hey, NFL.
It was the same thing with Pete Carroll at USC, where he had great success, and he was about to have the program get buried, which they had been for quite some time after his departure. And, perfect timing, right? I mean, let's just go to another job that pays tens of millions of dollars and see if I can't have a good time there. But, he certainly lasted, for an eternity by NFL standards when it comes to coaches at Seattle, and for good reason for the most part, except for that one play, that one stupid play call. I mean, this is another one of those deals, right? Bill Buckner, Jackie Smith, we've been talking about it, where one play ends up being the signature and characterizes and is the epitome of everything that you did as a pro. I would imagine if you mentioned Pete Carroll, the very first thing, in Miami, they would talk about the choke sign when he ran out on the field as I guess it was the DC of the New York Jets at the time.
Yes.
And he runs out on the field after a kicker, Pete Stoyanovich, missed a field goal. I believe it was a Sunday night game. And he did one of these. And that pissed off Dan Marino to the point where he said, I don't care that we're down 32 points. I'm going to rally this team in the last 4 minutes and we're going to win. And they buried the Jets in that ballgame. The Doc Rivers did get the Milwaukee job. Seems like it's tantamount to a kiss of death. Milwaukee did win with their interim coach in place last night. But and they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers and snapped their 8-game winning streak. The Cavaliers suddenly thrust into the picture of teams that might have an outside chance. I know you don't agree with me on this, and I would tend to agree with you.
They're young. I like their team. I like their talent a lot. I just think they're young. That's my only
Are they going to win the championship? In all likelihood, not. Would it be worth a sniff at like 35-1 right now in the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Yeah.
If you put $10 on it to win 350, are you going to kill yourself? Although that's the kind of sucker bet that the FanDuel people and the DraftKings people are hoping that you'll be talked into by some idiot that's on the air like me. I got the idea from somebody else. I'm plagiarizing the idea here. Right? I feel like I should be the president of Harvard University, for God's sake. Do your own work, DeForest. But it was suggested, and I looked at that briefly and thought, you know what? 35-1 might be a little bit short, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are on fire. Do they have a chance to maybe win the championship? That's very, very suspect. That's why it's 35-1 right now. But Doc Rivers gets the Milwaukee job. Well, we'll see if he can't get them knocked out in the second round. I would love to be going against Milwaukee in the second round because that's usually where any Doc Rivers team, no matter how talented, no matter how laden with all-star caliber players, that's usually where they make their exit, man. This is, not Jean-Paul Sartre, no exit. This is just straight up. You can almost count on it that Doc Rivers' team will be knocked out in the second round of the playoffs. And then a great match in tennis last night. Coco Gauff didn't have her best stuff early against the almighty Arina Sabalenka, who is from Belarus and has been on a roll. She's been to 6 straight Grand Slam semifinals. She only has 1 win overall in a tournament, Grand Slam tournament, and that was last year's Australian Open. And she now appears in an extremely favorable spot to win it all after taking out Coco Gauff in 2 sets. Gauff was down and it looked like she was going to get thrashed and bounced out of there in quick and simple fashion, but continued to battle back in the first set, took it to a tiebreaker, where Sabalenka eventually prevailed, and then she wins the second set 6-4. So congrats to Arina Sabalenka, and bloodbath on tap tonight, as you have Jannik Sinner, who's playing great, hasn't dropped a set yet in the tournament. He's won 15 straight sets against Novak Djokovic, the 28-time defending champion. Djokovic is on a 34-match winning streak at the Australian Open, which, if you do the math, you have to win 7 to win it all. So that's 4 straight titles in the tournaments he's participated in, and 5 out of 7, 5 up and 2 to go, one of which will be Jannik Sinner. And that is coming up early in the morning, and should be just some great scintillating action. Both guys just clobber the ball and are playing well enough. And the other final, people, here's another one, Lubie, with the social media. All of a sudden, Carlos Alcaraz, who's been sensational, he's only 20 years old. He's already won a couple of slams. He's been in just unbelievable nail-biting battles with the greats of the game, including Novak Djokovic. Sensational, spectacular match action. I mean, worth the price of admission for anybody. And he is being trashed. He is being pounded. He is just being slaughtered on social media as if he was a phony because he lost to Alexander Zverev in the quarterfinals, while Zverev was on fire, and he still made a match of it. And all of a sudden, people are saying, yeah, what a fraud this guy turned out to be. He doesn't have it. He's arrogant. He's this. I mean, he's none of that. It's really amazing. I mean, what happened to sports fans, Louis? Just become a psychotic bunch of maniacs, a mob-like mentality where a guy falls one time, falls short in tremendous competition, and everybody just wants to write him off, and all of a sudden they're writing an epitaph, an obituary for Carlos Alcaraz. Very, very much unjustified. But you do have Medvedev going against Zverev. Medvedev, perennial semifinalist, and also has a championship at the Australian Open. And he's the weird kind of, quirky guy that gives a lot of people problems, and interesting character as well. And Zverev is coming back from that horrific ankle injury that he suffered at the French Open a couple of years ago. Might have been written off as if he was really dead, and came back. He staged a marvelous comeback, knocked off Alcaraz. So should be exciting stuff tonight as the men's semifinals take place at the Australian Open. That's going to do it for this edition of the Morning Briefing. Sorry, I bowed out there for a second. I don't know what happened. I spilled a cup of coffee, and I don't know if that was the cause of it, but it's always, I mean, if you're looking for the signs, it was a bad sign. So, Lubie, I'm glad you were able to carry the ball there. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I come back and say, hey, what happened? And you're like, I'm still on.
That's why I wanted you to know that we were just rolling with it.
All right, very good. So thanks, people, for tuning in. We'll have some analysis, so maybe we'll go into more detail
Yeah, because I
on
need to
the.
talk about the NFC Championship. So Defo gave you a taste, and we'll dive more into the NFC Championship game tomorrow.
Yeah, San Francisco and Detroit. Very interesting matchup.
Yes.
You got the misfits and cast-offs and the
Yep,
regular
yep.
blue-collar guys. I mean, the tail of the tape is not pretty in terms of, although, the one category that you think Detroit competes with San Francisco might be in terms of putting out musical talent.
Yes.
Do you just give them the nod for Motown alone? I mean,
Yes.
you can't discount the long career and the massive following of the Grateful Dead, Carlos Santana. A lot of great musicians coming out of San Francisco. You had Jefferson Airplane, all kinds of rock bands, great jazz musicians. But Motown probably gives them the edge, right? And then you throw in Bob Seger and Eminem. Detroit, by a nose. When it comes to, if you're just going to base it on the musical talent alone, then go ahead and play the Lions and take the 7 points. All right, we're going to see you guys tomorrow. Another edition of the Morning Briefing. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in here on Caffeine TV and NoFilter.net. And we'll see you tomorrow on our very next effort here on the Morning Briefing.